Probably in my lifetime, the greatest thing that ever happened was the REA, Rural Electrification Act. We were Republicans and my dad was sort of anti-Roosevelt. But that's one of the good things he brought about. That has to be the greatest economic development tool that I have seen, that our country has seen. With Norris bringing on electricity, and a lot of things really developed after that with electricity, made a lot of things possible.
One of the earlier people who were pushing for rural electric cooperatives was Father Nell at Island Grove. And he wanted electricity for his church, and he was a person great for that community. So he and Russ Apple, the farm advisor here in Jasper County, Clay Trimble was a big worker on that. They worked together and had a lot to do in bringing rural electricity into the country.
I was secretary of the Jasper County Farm Bureau, and the farm advisor was R.E. Apple, and he worked along with Father Nell. Father Nell was a very nice person, and he was a community person, and he was wanting everyone to have a better way of life.
The Jasper County Farm Bureau was very aggressive in pushing for rural electric. In Effingham County, they were reluctant to push for it because they didn't think it'd go over. They didn't think it'd pay for itself. I know that's the reason that Newton became the home of Norris Electric, because of the Jasper County Farm Bureau and people like Father Nell who really pushed at it. And back then, the farm bureaus were a powerful system in each county.
People were trying to think of a name for the co-op, and at that time we raised a lot of red top around here, and so someone thought Red Top Electric Cooperative. And of course we got the Ambraw River here, and they said, well, Ambraw River Cooperative. And finally someone said, well, Senator Norris said he has been a pusher and a fighter for rural electric cooperatives. Let's name it after Senator Norris. When the co-op first started signing up members, the first thing was it was a $5 membership, and back then that was a few days' wages. And then also they had to promise that they would pay a minimum of $3 a month, which was 40 kilowatt hours. And they said, how in the world are we ever going to use 40 kilowatt hours in a month from a light bulb hanging from the ceiling?
The neighbors got together and signed up, and we signed up for $5 a month and wondered what we were going to use the $5 for. But it wasn't long till it was more than that.
Well, we had a little time getting electricity. We were at the end of the line, and our church, which is a half a mile across the field, had to give easement. And being a good Lutheran church with a lot of disagreements sometimes, they thought the $3 per month was extravagant. And it's the only time I remember my dad really getting angry, that he got angry, and they finally listened to him, I guess, and they went along with it. So that's when we got electricity. It was after the war. It was so wonderful having a bulb in each room. What an advancement that was. And a lot of things really developed after that with electricity, made a lot of things possible. And it's unbelievable how many people would come up with things to do with electricity. I mean, these little minds kept thinking of new ways of saving labor. It's a great economic development for our area and for our country.
I remember when we first got electricity, the first thing I bought was an electric clock, and I still have it. It's still running. And refrigerator was a great deal. I feel like one of the best things we ever had was a washer and dryer. And it was so much easier ironing than the old flat irons. And from there, it was just something new that we were purchasing all the time.
Rowena Hudson, who was a very important person with Norris Electric, and she was our first employee. Rowena was a dedicated rural electric cooperative personnel. She was kind of like the school teachers you have when you're going through school and you think, boy, that school teacher's tough. But then you realize that was one of the better teachers you ever had. She was a firm office manager, but everyone that ever worked for her realized that she was a good person to work for, and she was very fair to all the employees.
She had a lot of good traits, and she taught me a lot of important things when it come to bookkeeping and being accurate. And it was entirely different when we first started there. We could wear no slacks and no jeans. We all had to wear dresses, and just have a lot of good memories of Norris. Norris was very good to me, and was always appreciative.
I started working for Norris Electric in 1946. I'm Earl Yost. He was the first manager. Hired me on the spot and made up a whole crew then. And the pay was $20 a week. We done everything, building substations, transmission lines, working on OCRs and the whole works. I could dig a hole in 15 or 20 minutes. This was a straight space if the dirt was just right. Tree crew where I started, John Tabb was the foreman. Bob Coons, Leo Kerner Jr. and Lauren Dean Kerner. And
Russell Harrison he wasn't a manager, but he was the first person in charge working there at the Norris Electric to get things going. I don't remember what his title was. The challenge at one time was getting material. Look at all the construction that was going on, and every co-op was having the same trouble we were. We had contractors come in to build the first lines, and Damon Williams was a lineman on that crew from Indiana. He stayed on as a maintenance superintendent, who later became manager.
When I started Norris Electric, Damon Williams was the manager. And I'll be truthful, I was terrified of that man. I really was. He was really a nice guy, but he had a stern way about it. I mean, if he said it, that's the way it was going to be. And there was some tests we took that day, kind of an IQ test. That's why I never understood why I got in there. But Damon, he said, Kibler, you're hired. And he said, you come to work here with a new pair of leather gloves, your dinner bucket, and you be ready to be the tiredest human you've ever been come quitting time. And I was thrilled to death because he told me that start me at $3.12 an hour, and I thought there's nobody worth that kind of money, but I took it. So once we wanted to change the trucks that we were riding around in, we was riding the back of those pickups with plywood beds, and we went in to talk to him. It was Rick Stroll and Dave Shepard and me, and Rick was the only one that could find his voice. We were all scared to death. And the first word out of Damon Williams' mouth was, "What do you tough young bucks want?" And I melted in the seat, but Rick kept it going, and so he talked to us. Turned out that Damon wasn't the fierce man we thought. And after a few years, I got to know him.
I started working at Norris Electric in 1949, and Rowena Hudson hired me as a work order clerk. It was right at the beginning of the major construction of Norris Electric, right after the war, and we could get materials and so forth. And Joe Ware was our maintenance superintendent, and he knew the lines forwards and backwards. He was a great maintenance superintendent. And Carl Mitchell, electrification advisor, and Jack Hubbard, who did a lot of staking and was over the construction crews and so forth. And I would have to say he was a dedicated employee because he really put in a lot of time. Linemen were making 35 cents an hour. This came along at a good time for employees, and material was cheap. I felt real good working for Norris Electric. At that time, the members, to help speed things along, would come in and say, where do we go to work? They would clear out their own right-of-way. Everyone was ready for electricity. We got the co-op built, so tough times were good times too.
All the time I was home, we did not have electricity till I started high school. We used to study at home. We had kerosene lamps, on the table. But that's what we had to study by. But when we got the one electric light in the living room ceiling or the kitchen, that was quite a difference. You could really read your books a lot better that way.
Our first radio was a battery. And of course, when the battery went down, you didn't have any radio. And that was nice to have a radio that would continue playing for you. We liked Amos and Andy, and then there was local news. Our radio was our entertainment. Everybody had to be still when that was on.
It didn't dawn on me at that time what was happening, you know, how important electricity was to our rural area, and until we got it. Most people are willing to sign up. Ernie always tell me, as we travel around, we always watch electric lines. And you see a jog on an electric line, well, there's a reason for that jog. You know, somebody didn't give an easement, so they had to jog across the road and then back again.
Getting the members to sign up was one of the big, and we had a lot of different people going down the road talking to people. And there was a lady that just had a baby, and they were over there at her house, at their house, and there she was still in bed, and they were asking them to sign their membership, and they got a membership signed by Lantern that night. Back then, I can remember salesmen coming in, and they wanted to know where we were energizing the next line, because they had electric sweepers that they wanted to take out and sell. And you just think about all the people that were getting electricity then, what it did to everyone. Worcester's hardware store, any of those stores, and the people manufacturing refrigerators, electric stoves, electric toasters, all of those things created a lot of work for a lot of people in the city as well. Whenever we worked out a project, how many new consumers we were going to have and so forth, and the cost, that was sent into REA, and then we were given the amount of money then to build a co-op. Also, back then, we had fellows that went out and all they did that day was dig post holes. Maybe 8 a day, I don't remember the number, but they had a number they should get. And you know, back then, we had very few gravel roads. It was mostly mud out there. Every field had a fence row around it, and there was a lot of brush. And try to get your equipment down that road to build those lines was also tough.
I started working at Norris Electric in 1952. I really needed a good job, and it was a good job, and I tried to really do my best. It wasn't too long till there was an opening to be a cashier, and I wanted to do that so bad. I finally got the job, or the promotion, and I dearly loved that. Being cashier, people get to know you by name when they come in, and you eventually get to know the customer. And you see people today, I meet people today and say, oh, I remember you. You worked at Norris Electric. The office was up on the north side of the square, and it was huge front windows. We had no air conditioning, and it was very hot in the summertime.
That old office, I had a flat top roof, no insulation, no air conditioners, but we had a lot of floor fans blowing around, and Merle Yost, our manager, he felt sorry for us. He tried to help, and there was a little cloakroom right there in the main office. So he got a tub and filled it with ice and blew a fan over that to try to cool that office down. Now, things were getting pretty desperate then. And back at that time in the old office, the billing was done by hand billing. We had a big billing machine in there that those girls would sit in there and poke in the number of kilowatt hours and look up on the chart, and well, that's so much, and here's so much tax, and they'd put that on. And that was a continuous job.
It was a pleasure to see people come into the office and apply for electricity, and how happy they were to find out that they were going to be getting electricity and making plans of the appliances at home, and it would just be so much easier on them. With electric, it was much more convenient.
I can remember when we never had any yard lights, you know, and we'd drive through the country and everybody had a yard light. We thought how wonderful that was.
It turned out that the farmers are one of the best members that the electric company can have. They are large users and they just continue to increase all the time. And when the farmer got the 1 horsepower motor, it could do more in 1 hour than some laborer could do in 8. So that started changing the life for the people out in the rural area.
You know, the Rural Electric Cooperative program is probably one of the most, if not the most important regulatory program that came into being. The older employees had a great sense of responsibility because when they came on, the co-op was new, the electricity in the rural area was new, and it was very, very important for them to get out there and restore outages as quickly as they could.
When I first started, there was several of the older fellows there, which was an advantage to me. I got to learn from all of them, even the groundmen that had been there for years. And like I said, that was a big advantage. You got to learn from the older guys that knew it, had been there, and had done it. The things that I did at Norris Electric as a tree trimmer and as a lineman and a supervisor, I'll always do think that I enjoyed being the lineman the most. Over the years since that I worked there, the equipment changes was just astronomical. I mean, what you started out with and what they had when I left, it was a huge difference in all of it.
I started in September of 1965 as a tree trimmer, worked with a lot of good people. On the tree crew was Phil Apple and Herman Shackman, Horace Goff. Horace Goff was like a monkey in a tree. I never saw anybody that could work trees like Horace could. Some of the old boys, they didn't cut you much slack till they were able to see what cloth you were cut from.
I came to Norris Electric in November of 1966. I got back home from the Marine Corps on a Friday evening, and Leroy Wakefield was in my father's driveway waiting for me to get there and told me I had an appointment with Damon Williams on Monday morning. So I went to see Damon, and we sat and talked, and he said, "I'm going to need you probably in 3 or 4 weeks." And I said, "That's fine, that'll work all right." And we talked a little bit longer, and he said, "I might need you in about 2 weeks." And I said, "That'll be fine." And then finally he said, "Come in tomorrow morning." And he said, "You know why I'm hiring you?" And I said, "I have no idea." And he said, "Because you didn't ask how much you was going to make." But I didn't care. I figured if we made $100 a week in 1966, we'd be walking in tall cotton. Right inside the back door, there used to be a gathering every morning, and all the old timers would stand there and watch us young guys come in. I was scared to death of them, so I listened to everything they had to say.
I started in the billing department, and we converted from machine billing, hand billing, machine billing, and we went to a big NCR computer.
The first computer, I think, was called the Fat Albert. And it was big, took up that whole big room.
I told Damon, I said, "Damon, you know, I think this thing's got to be climate control." Man, that didn't sit very well with Damon, you know, and he didn't know that. Well, at that time, those computers required that. And that computer covered one whole wall and went down another wall for quite a ways.
And Rowena had the philosophy that she wanted us all to learn. Whoever wanted to learn the computer had the option to do that. And we all learned this together, and it was quite an operation from going from one to the other, but it all went smoothly because Rowena was a very good taskmaster.
Rowena and the office staff took courses in the computer program. I believe I can say that we were probably the first cooperative that had computer programming and billing.
Back in '79, we had a terrible ice storm here, and we worked for about a month. And the last day of the ice storm, we was using what we call our snowcat. The ground had all thawed out, and we took this snowcat out west of town here in the cornfield. Of course, the tracks were half full of mud, and when you stepped in the cornfield, you went clear almost to your knees. If you didn't have that thing moving along, you couldn't walk. And the last day of that ice storm pretty well wore the rest of us out by getting this line back up. That was a trying time. That was the most difficult time that I've ever had here at Norris Electric.
And the thing about an ice storm, you can take a tornado, it goes through and it tears out a strip. But on an ice storm, it comes down all around you. We had lines down, poles broke. I don't remember. It seemed like we ordered 1,000 poles. And go out in the field and people would say, when are we going to get it back on? And I didn't blame them for asking us that. You know, they may be on tomorrow, it may be several days.
What a great job they did in those kind of situations. And it was lightning and storming and ice and snow, and I always respected all the linemen that did that great work.
It was always a good feeling when, after a storm, see the lights go back on. It was a satisfying experience, and worked with a lot of good people, and that made it all worthwhile.
When I came into the co-op, I came in under a manager that had been with the cooperative for over 50 years. He'd been manager for 17 years, and he had a great understanding of how the co-op world worked and how this cooperative worked. When I came on, he was a great mentor to me to help get me started. You hear all the time about the cooperative family, and it is a family. In the investor-owned utility world, you had to work through layers of people to try to get anything done. So here, it's a matter of board of directors, the manager, and the staff, and it's very easy to get things done, make a decision, and do something. I would stack the employees up and the staff up here at Norris Electric against anyone. They really care about the membership, they care about people in general. I just can't say enough about the employees here at Norris Electric.
I always felt that the co-op was a special place because it was entirely different than a for-profit company. It was the cooperative. The people had a say in what was done with the cooperative. We got to vote on the directors, and I think it was just wonderful.
Really, all of my life, I've reaped the benefits of somebody else's work before me. Everything I've had has came as a result of somebody else. Norris has always been good to us. If you ever needed any help, they was always the first one, seems like, in the community that would come around and help. They look out for the people, I think, first, then the business second.
I felt proud of my job all the 51 years that I worked there. I'd like telling people and drawing pictures how you wired up a three-way or a four-way switch. They thought I really knew something. All those things, those were great times, and Norris Electric is blessed with the best members of this part of the state.
Well, Norris Electric is a special place to work. We always had people showing us where the wires were down, showing us where the poles were down, and you got a lot of personal relationships that still today I'm friends with some of those people. That we got some of the best members in the world.
There are so many people around that it's kind of amazing that the good people we have in our community. Norris Electric is a tremendous organization. I'm really proud to be a part of it.